Ed Husic, thank you for joining us this morning.
Morning.
I should note that you agreed to this interview before your ministerial fate was sealed, so we do appreciate you sticking to that commitment.
Thanme for that, and happy Mother's Day, Bob.
Happy Mother's Day indeed. I neglected to mention that to all the mums out there, including my own, so I'm glad you've prompted me on that. Look, I wanted to start with when you were sworn in 3 years ago to the ministry, you actually famously were the first to use a Quran for the swearing-in ceremony. And you said at the time it sent a signal to the broader community that people from different backgrounds, different faiths, can have a role to play in building a better country. What signal does the decision to drop you from the ministry send?
I think for me personally, having the chance to be elected first as a son of immigrants, a child of migrants, meant a great deal to me personally. I never thought that would happen. I certainly think my parents never thought that either, so it was a great opportunity. And then to be able to take part in a cabinet meant a great deal. You can't celebrate diversity and then expect it to sit in a corner silent. Like, you need to speak up when you bring those different views to either a cabinet table or a caucus. I certainly took the view you need to speak up for the communities that you care about. I certainly tried to help us navigate wretchedly difficult issues, such as what we're seeing has unfolded in Gaza post the horrors of October 7. I don't think I could ever stay silent in the face of innocent civilians being slaughtered in their tens of thousands and being starved out of Gaza. So I tried to find the way to be able to speak at the cabinet table and speak elsewhere, to be able to make sure that communities we represent know that their voices are heard. And importantly, if I can end on this point, you know, there are a lot of people that seeing things on their TV screens, seeing those horrors, turning to their political representatives, and they're not asking for the lines of the day, they're asking for a statement of values, what you believe in, what you'll stand up for, and I think that's an important obligation to fulfil.
Do you think, in what you're saying there, do you think part of the reason why you've been dropped is because you've been more outspoken on those issues?
I think I fulfilled my role not just as a cabinet minister, but as a caucus member. You should have the ability to speak up on the issues that you believe in. You should have the ability to question. It builds a stronger, not a weaker party to do so. I think, we can see at the extremes what happens when people feel like they can't speak up. I mean, I would hate us to think we get to a situation like Trump Republicans who know something's wrong and don't speak. I'm not saying that's the case here, but there is a role, a value in questioning and speaking up.
But do you think this has cost you?
Oh, I think it's been a factor in there. Would I do things differently? I don't think so. We've probably established that Balkan charm has a shelf life of 3 years, but
so you're saying that as a factor, being more of an agitator on some of these issues has played a role in your demise from the ministry?
Well, I'd put it this way: I mean, most, particularly in the New South Wales right, sort of students of history with long memories, there have been times where in previous governments there's been very vigorous debate. We had a government that went for 5 terms. We've had people in senior roles in this government that did the same thing as I did, questioned. And I don't think that's an unhealthy thing. And I certainly don't want one of the lessons out of this that you can't question, because I think there's value in doing it.
But you're saying Labor's less tolerant of that debate these days?
I don't think we can afford to be less tolerant.
Was your experience that there was little tolerance for that sort of open debate?
I think there were times where it had to be encouraged, and I think in particular on issues like Gaza, there needed to be faith in Muslim communities around the country that their voice was being heard. That was really important. A lot of communities, members of Muslim communities, stayed with the government through this election, and I would hate to think that they've felt abandoned after that, and that there isn't a role to play for hearing their voices.
So why do you think you were dropped? If that was a factor, what about the way the factions operate, the raw numbers of it that we were just discussing earlier? Do you accept that the New South Wales right faction, of which you're a member, did have to lose someone?
I think it's important to emphasise factions play a really important role in managing merit, moderating ambition and providing an orderly transition for renewal, right? So that's very important. And I'm not speaking that way just off the cuff. I mean, my experience back in 2019 is I could have easily prevailed in that ballot. I took the view it was untenable to have a former Premier sitting on the backbench. We needed to do what was good for the collective, right? I live my values. I think it's important to say you sometimes have to make a decision that's good for the collective, and I live my values.
And you're saying your colleagues on this occasion did not live their values?
Well, I think, look, the difficult issue here is that we've had sort of barefaced ambition and a Deputy Prime Minister wield a factional club to reshape the ministry. I think when people look at a Deputy Prime Minister, they expect to see a statesman, not a factional assassin.
There's some strong words. You're saying Richard Marles has put his own ambition to boost his numbers ahead of the good of the party and the government.
Well, I think a lot of people would draw that conclusion, right? And I think he needed to exercise leadership. He's part of the leadership group. He needs to be able to show that we've got to be able to manage these things in an orderly way. I've tried to show that in times past. I think he can show that. And I really feel for, if I can say, we've had, it's been a bit of a roller coaster week. I've felt for people like Dave Smith, who's finally edging ahead in Bean. Great to see. Lisa Chester's back. Tremendous outpouring of support for me from across factions and across the political divide, which has been terrific. And I feel for supporters of our party who went from the high of a Saturday and a terrific and tremendous win to the lows of factional grubbiness. And I just feel like it's been a distraction at the start of what will be a successful second term.
And do you primarily blame Richard Marles for that?
I think Richard has a lot, there will be a lot of questions put to Richard about his role, and that's something that he will have to answer and account for.
You blame him?
Well, I think I've been pretty clear in my last answer.
In terms of your own faction, though, if you had to lose someone, why was it you and not Tony Burke, Chris Bowen or Jason Clare?
I think I didn't want to. I made the decision ultimately we would have had to have taken it to a national right ballot. The way it was all managed was all very last minute. You've heard the stories about Mark trying to get in contact with Richard. These things were left, as I said, last minute, and I think there was a deliberateness about all that. I wasn't going to put my colleagues through that, and I did, again, what I thought was the right thing to do.
So you're saying there was no ballot in the right faction in New South Wales. You offered to go?
Correct, because I did not want to put my colleagues through a national ballot. And again, I just did it in the interest of stability.
But coming back to your earlier point about the need to maintain some diversity in the front bench, shouldn't some of your New South Wales right colleagues have gone, well, hang on, in the interests of preserving that diversity, Ed Husic should stay, I should go?
Look, I think what is done is done, right? We've got to be able to move ahead, but I think we've got to learn a few lessons out of this. In particular, I think I thought it was also especially disrespectful of the Deputy Prime Minister to put the Prime Minister in a terrible place where he was being asked to intervene. I didn't think that was right either. The PM had great authority coming out of the election. I think if he'd exercised it in a way that provided for stability and a strong team that had been there and could go forward, no one would have quibbled about that.
So I was going to ask you about the role of the Prime Minister. Do you think he should have intervened or not?
Well, of course, right? Like, I'm not going to sit here with false modesty, of course. And when you see, you hear him rattle off names of the number of people that would be retained or retaining ministerial spots, I'm sure I wasn't the only minister wanting to be in that list. And again, like if he'd exercised that authority, I don't think anyone would have quibbled. I just think, we've obviously got to be able to avoid these type of episodes. I think the factional grubbiness there are better ways. Factional mechanics do help manage merit and moderate ambition, and that's when they work well. We've seen it at its best previously. We saw it at its worst this week.
On the role of the Prime Minister, though, obviously you would have liked him to intervene. Did you call him? Did you speak?
No, I didn't. We did speak yesterday. He rang me yesterday and we're catching up on Monday. And I look forward to that being a constructive discussion that talks about the role that I can keep playing as well, and being able to speak up on the things that I think are important and that I care about and that I represent people in the community.
Did he explain to you why he didn't intervene?
I was a very, very quick call, and we'll no doubt chat about things on Monday.
Did he thank you for your service?
Again, it was a quick call.
He didn't thank you?
Quick call.
Find that a little strange.
Oh, well, again, you can canvass a lot of issues, but it was, I no doubt we'll talk about it on Monday.
Okay. Well, in terms of your future then, did he suggest you'd be an assistant minister or any sort of role ongoing or not?
Oh, no, we didn't. Again, very brief discussion, and we didn't canvass that. So, from my perspective, I think it was, I still think I've got a contribution to make, and I want to do so. I was reminded that someone had once said that, success isn't final, failure isn't fatal, and the courage to continue is what matters. And here I am, a Labor MP, quoting Churchill on Insiders. That's where we've got to, but yeah.
You're staying in the Labor Party though?
Indeed.
Okay.
The party has been, can I just say, the party has given me great opportunity. And its faith in me, particularly with my faith, has allowed me in part to make history and break records. I've been attracted to it because of the capacity to question and challenge status quo and challenge conservatism. It provides hope, aspiration for others. I want to be part of that process still.
And in terms of challenging, as a backbencher, you will have more freedom to speak up on issues. You've got a smile on your face already. Here they come.
I'm always happy talking with you, David.
You are. Gaza, we talked about that before. I mean, we're now into, 3 months of Israel's blockade of Gaza. It's doing this, it says, because it hopes Hamas will release the remaining hostages. But doctors in Gaza, for example, are pointing out it's the most vulnerable there who are suffering through this humanitarian blockade. What's your view on what needs to happen there?
From day one, after the horrors of October 7, I emphasised we needed to acknowledge humanity for what Israelis suffered on October 7, and then what innocent civilians suffered, Palestinians thereafter, slaughtered in their tens of thousands. We've seen just in the past week or so, the Israeli parliament say it wants to annex Gaza, and effectively that is a form of ethnic cleansing. We've seen the starvation of its people through the failure to provide humanitarian assistance. We do need to keep the focus on there and also ensure that there are voices on the international stage, of which we should continue to be one, that stress that innocent people should not be treated this way and starved out of Gaza. And if I might add, that's against international humanitarian law. Starving people out in conflict is a war crime.
Is Israel committing a war crime in your view?
The Netanyahu government has atrociously managed this. It has been responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of civilians through its inability to distinguish between combatant and civilian, which goes against international humanitarian law.
Are you saying it's a war crime?
And it should be held to account. Starvation is a war crime.
Just a couple of other issues domestically. Do you still think a company tax cut should be looked at?
So my argument has been that we need to have a growth agenda. I think we've done some great work in terms of helping average Australian workers get ahead. We need to fuel growth into the future. That's why I've been so focused on technology. I think having that growth agenda for the long term is crucial for the good of the nation, and we should consider a wide range of options.
Including
more than anything else. Let me stress this. More than anything else, we need to burn through the timidity that has shackled us in the first term. We are going to need to make big changes in a world that is changing fast to ensure that the country stands on its own 2 feet. Very important. and there should be a number of things considered. And I wasn't just talking about company tax, David. I also stressed the need for investment allowances to renew machinery, to see capex grow, have a productivity burst as well, because it's good for.
We should look at all of those things.
It's good for to have strong businesses, great jobs, a strong economy that's well fueled into the future.
And when it comes to your portfolio, whether it's tech, AI, quantum computing, you are seen as one of the few in the government who's passionate about it and gets it. Are there others in cabinet who do understand the challenges, the opportunities, the role of government in these areas?
I took the more than 10 years getting my head around the complexity of technology, talking with people, listening, learning. Now, artificial intelligence, I've been talking about that well before anyone was thinking about the implications of ChatGPT. It takes time to do that, and I'm probably a person most well versed in the government around that. Who takes up those reins is up to the PM, but I certainly believe that technology will fuel a growth agenda, and the race is on for countries to get their head around it, and that's why I thought some of the things that we took in the first term of this government set us up for the long term as well.
Will we see you back on the front bench?
Well, I'll be working towards that, absolutely. I have a contribution to make. I want to keep making it, and I'll do it from the backbench. And I've got to say, I've walked political deserts before. All I hope for at the end is you might have a bottle of water for me when I emerge.
I've got a glass of water for you, right?
Well done.
Ed Husic, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good on you.